As far as I am concerned, cooking is not only creative, but it has to be fun. I think it has to be fun. In this case, we're doing pork and beans. Beans and pork. Now, somebody will write to me and say, that's not the proper way. You got to understand that this is my way of doing it. Besides, it's going to be just a little bit different than what you're used to. Because, as I said, it has to be fun. 2 cans of beans, small red beans, and 1 can of coconut milk. Now, I'd have preferred to use real coconut milk, but this will have to do. As it turned out, the 2 cans of beans and the 1 can of coconut milk was perfect. Notice that the coconut milk covered all of the beans. All I had to do then was to stir it a little bit to make sure that everything was mixed well. That I did. Remember what I mentioned earlier? I said that cooking has to be creative and it has to be fun. And I agree with that, and I believe that. The next ingredient was pork. I used salt pork because it's salted, cured, so to speak. And number 2, because it's a pork. Now, pork is one of those foods that's a closeted food. If you ask 10 people if they eat pork, chances are 8 out of the 10 will say, what, me? No, I will never eat pork. Be that as it may, I like pork. So, I got some aluminum foil, corrugated, I did that, and I used my salt pork. Interesting about salt pork, it's $1.06 per pound, yet bacon is $4.50 a pound or more. What's the difference? I have a theory. I think it's because bacon is sliced, why it's so expensive. Anyway, I sliced 2 pieces of salt pork, just like that. Looked like thick bacon, doesn't it? Because that's what I wanted. Then I cut them up in bite-sized pieces. In the meantime, my beans in the coconut milk was really cooking well, and I liked that. It had come to a boil. From now on, of course, what we need to do is to put the lid on and have it simmer, and it did. I had it simmer for about, 30-40 minutes. In the meantime, I put my salt pork in the oven, about 400 degrees for about 40 minutes. I don't remember the exact time, but the time is not really that important. What I wanted to do was to shrink the pork, get as much of the fat out of the pork, leave the flavor so I could add it to the pork and beans, rather than add it to the beans. So there you see, the pork was added to the beans. All I had to do was submerge them a little bit, make sure that they get in there, because it's going to simmer again, don't forget, for about another hour and a half or so. Simmer. That's the operative word. Then I added a tablespoon of brown sugar, brown cane sugar, because in my opinion it adds that little tiny bit of flavor that I like. So, to recap, we had 2 cans of beans, 1 can of coconut milk, albeit light. I would have preferred to have the real thing. Then I added the pork, salt pork, to it. Remember now, you don't need to add salt because the salt pork would add enough salt. As it turned out, I had to add a little bit more water because things dried out more than I thought they would. But I wasn't done. As a matter of fact, I think if you've watched my cooking, you know what's to come. Anyway, here we go. The lid went on and it went to simmer. In the meantime, I made my dumplings. Dumplings, as you know, is very, very easy to make. You simply put flour. In my case, I added some garlic salt, a little bit of water to make a dough, and then I made the dumplings. I made little spinners, and then I added the spinners. That's what they're called in Jamaica, these little spinners, dumplings. I added that to my pork and beans with a tablespoon of sugar. I added that to the thing and then allowed it to simmer for about another hour, perhaps an hour and a half. You want to make sure that the pork is cooked thoroughly. Put the lid on, and there you have it. So, while the pork was cooking, by the way, one more thing. Just before I put the lid on, I also added a Scotch bonnet pepper to this cooking, to this fantastic work of art. But I did not break the pepper. Okay, that's important. In the meantime, I made some rice. No salt, of course. 2 cups of boiling water with 1 cup of rice. Once you add the rice to the boiling water, then all you need to do now is to stir a little bit, put your stove on simmer, put the lid on, and about 35, perhaps 40 minutes later, you'll have rice. And it'll be just right. Anyway, while that was being done, of course, my pork and beans was simmering on the stove not far away, on the next burner, of course. And there you have it. About 30 minutes later, after I added the Scotch bonnet pepper, I took it out without breaking it. You have got to have some respect for this pepper. It is very hot. If you want to have spicy pork and beans, then perhaps you should break the Scotch bonnet pepper. In the meantime, my rice was done, so all I had to do was to add my pork and bean with spinach, and it was a rather delicious meal. I loved it.